Hello and welcome. Whether you're listening live or on the replay, I'm really happy that you are here because we're talking about what I consider to be one of the most important topics that there is on the planet. I've actually spent a good 42 years of my life studying and reading and spending thousands of hours with teachers and just really kind of weaving together what feels like clarity at this point. And the book, The Art of Returning to Love, How to Show Fear and Stress the Exit and Heal, is kind of the streamlined, cut to the chase version of what has taken me a while to understand and decipher. And so I wrote it for you so that you can cut to the chase yourself. You know, people are busy. We want to have a spiritual relationship. We were just watching the George Harrison documentary, and his song My Sweet Lord is about how it takes so long and why does it have to take so long. And it's a lovely song. If you haven't heard it or don't remember it, you can go to YouTube and listen to it. But it's like, it's true, it seems like it takes forever, on the timeline of life. It probably is a blip on the screen, but nonetheless, this is my best attempt to cut to the chase and give you the how-tos and the understanding, because definitely our mind has to be on board with all of this. We'll talk about that in a minute. But today we're going to be talking about the nature of energy and why that matters. And if we've not yet met, I'm Laurie Morse, a 30-year practitioner of Chinese medicine and the director of the Sacred Health Academy, where we teach women generally in or looking toward the second half of her life who really want to get her health back and has tried everything. She knows she has to include her sacred self, but she doesn't know how. And so we go through a journey really together, because at this point, this is why I say the second half of life, we realize that it is not a switch of a flip to turn all this on, but rather a journey. And we do this all without overwhelm. It's an online educational experience. And so I invite you to consider putting yourself on that path, whether it's with, this online academy, the Sacred Health Academy, or any other version. The key is that we have something that we can walk consistently, have accountability for, and be in a community of like-hearted, love-based beings, human beings, if you will. So let's talk about the number one premise, and grab your cup of tea if you want. It's quite cold here. You might be able to tell that with all the layers I have on, or the wrapping. But grab a cup of tea and let's just chat about this, right? So the number one premise is whether or not we come from a place of being broken, wounded, a sinner, not enough, right? Like, that's what has been programmed into us in a very deep and unconscious way. So we can tend to operate from that place until we become conscious of it and make clearer decisions, more conscious decisions, and understand that we're actually an extension of nature. We're an extension of the source of life. We can't not be, right? Just like a tree grows out of nature, grows out of the ground and is considered nature. Well, it's the same idea with us, and it's hidden in plain sight everywhere. We just don't always connect the dots or give ourselves permission to come from that premise, right? Like, if we came from the premise that I'm already whole, why? Because I'm an extension of my higher self, which is a part of the whole already, and that part of me is already whole. It lives in a soup of well-being, if we can say it that way, is healthy, and the more we connect with that part of our anatomy, which is, I like to say this over and over because sometimes we need this repetition for our mind to get on board, but our higher self, which is actually a greater part of our anatomy, albeit it's non-physical, but it's a greater part of our anatomy than our flesh and bones, right? And it's as important and as much a part of our anatomy as our hands and our legs and our arms and all the organs that we know to exist inside this bubble of biology that we're having an experience in. You've probably heard we're spiritual beings having a human experience, right? So my knowing now, from having walked this journey for as long as I have, and I'm not done, right? I just have gathered nuggets along the way that I like to share, because what I know is when I share nuggets, when I live this myself, it lowers suffering and it increases well-being and wholeness. And that's what we all want, right? That's what helps us have better relationships, healthier communities, more vitality, energy, and health in our bodies, the ability to align with abundance, a more empowered, ease-filled, expressed sense of self. I mean, all the goods lie in this connection, right? And it's in this understanding. And so all we're doing is we're building a muscle, just like we would increase our bicep strength by lifting a weight. We're building the muscle of cultivating this relationship with this part of our anatomy. To me, it makes the most perfect sense. Anyway, so if we are an extension of this part of ourselves, and that part of ourselves is already whole, what are we doing then? Well, what I've learned is that we're peeling away the layers of um, beliefs and programming that come from culture, and maybe we've carried it in with us in our DNA, from our lineage, there's a lot of programming that seems to be the truth, but it is not. We can't say it isn't true because we're living it, but it isn't the whole truth, right? So we're stretching into, we're lifting our awareness. We're looking towards a vista, if you will, that holds a more complete version of our truth. And it takes a while to sort of, one, trust it, and two, to remember to lift our awareness into that view, so that we can be shown a broader scope, right? A greater perspective than the one that we've sort of habitually, the only one we habitually allow ourselves to see, which is, I'm broken, I'm wounded, I'm not enough. In some paths, religious paths, we're sinners. And I have rejected that. And reject may sound like a harsh word, but on a personal level, I no longer see that as a premise from which I come from. The premise from which I come from is that I am an extension of my higher self, which is nature. I'm an extension of nature herself. I'm an extension of the source of life. I'm an extension of creation, and because I am an extension of that, we're all slivers or holograms of that, right? I'm a microcosm of the macrocosm, so are you. And so if that's the case and I'm already whole, then what's my job here in my life and in my body and in the world? Well, my job is to clear the path. It's to peel away all the grime. It's to peel back the layers and the veils of non-truth, so that I can actually know what is true about me. And what is true, and what's true about any one of us is true about every human being, right? Like these are some of the most core teachings of any spiritual path, of any religious path, of any philosophical path, and they're universal, right? Like we don't have to fight about which path is more right or more wrong. We can just say, okay, these are universal. These are this is essence of truth here, and they exist when you peel back all the dogma and doctrine. In the core of every path, right? So my invitation is to be in that inquiry with yourself. Like, and I've said this before, but what I always do when I'm trying to understand something that has been brought to my awareness at the conscious level, that clearly was below the conscious level for a long time, until the moment it became conscious, I ask my heart. I say, hey, here's this thing. I'd love to know more about it. Can you show me more? Can you show me what is true about this for me? And I always get I always get guided into that truth. And sometimes it might come from a conversation with someone. Sometimes it might come from a book I'm reading, or, there's any number of ways, and it's true for all of us, right? And you've probably had that experience, on any number of topics. So when the energy, the source of life, extends or flows itself into us as us, because every molecule of my being, every molecule of your being is an extension of this higher energy, right? This higher self, this higher presence that we are. It comes in through the top of our head, and what change? It's pure, and it's the vibration of love, which is the fabric of the entire universe. It's light. Light carries love. This is, love nourishes light. This is the beautiful dance of the yin and yang, and they're inseparable, or the alpha and the omega, the masculine and the feminine. It's an inseparable dance. They just have different characteristics about them, right? So when it comes in through the top of our head, it's our mind, right? That holds, whether it's conscious or subconscious. It's our mind that holds these beliefs and these patterns and these concepts and these constructs that we've been programmed with. That then, if it's not, as the light is coming in, or the light and the love, the life force, let's call it the light force, right, is dropping in, and it has to move itself through these concepts and these programmings. It changes the nature of the original pure love energy, right? And it gets sort of qualified, if you will. That's one of the words I try to explain in the book, because a lot of times that word is like, well, what does that mean, qualify or misqualify? It means that if there's pure life force, and it's the vibration of love, and then it passes through. I mean, this is just the best way I have to talk about it, right? Just give me a little leeway on the way it actually is. But we have to speak it into words so we have an understanding about it, right? So it passes through our mind, and then as it continues to fill us and provide us with a life force into every cell of our body, it's both the pure love, and it's qualified or includes or is now mixed with what was in our mental our mental consciousness, right? Our consciousness, let's say. And so that's that's now a mix. It's like if you were to have a crystal clear glass, and you want to have a glass of water, and you pour pure water in the glass, and if there's nothing else in it, it stays pure. But if there's, let's say you put just like a half a cup of dirt from your yard, right? And then you put the dirt in the glass, and then you want to pour the water in, the water's not going to remain pure water, and you're probably not going to want to drink it, because I don't know anybody really who wants to drink mud on the regular. So that's just one visual of the way to kind of conceptualize this. So and then the other thing to think about around this topic is that there is a high expression. So this is what I mean by a greater truth, and and then our lower human mind's way of perceiving these kinds of things. So when I mentioned yin yang, masculine, feminine, alpha and omega, these are expressions of energy. So first there is the whole, and just about every spiritual path, or philosophical religious path has a way of describing this, right? First there is the whole, and then there is a division into two. That two is the masculine and the feminine. It's still inseparably whole. It's just that they have different qualities. So, for example, the masculine energy at the high expression, this high expression still not like drop through our consciousness and shift it a bit. Divine masculine energy is courageous. It's a sort of light, basically, or an alignment with the light of life. And this energy has a power and an activity and a divine will and a divine perfection to it. And it's right use of power. This is an important component, because we have been living in eons of time where power has not been used according to divine will, and it has not been used as a right use of power. So then we have a splintering of the abuse of power or the abdication of power, right? So the conscious use of high right use of masculine energy is courage, light, right use of power, activity. This is what animates us. We move about in the world, and we move and we speak, and all these things are because of the yang, or the masculine energy. And the yin, or the feminine energy, is about reverence for life. It's about nourishing and nurturing life. It's about inclusivity. It's our heart and our love, awareness, and we infuse that in every choice we make, right? And when we stray from these ideals, I already said what happens with the abuse of power, and when we stray from the ideal of the yin, or the feminine, is that we abdicate power. We There's a victim energy that becomes part of that. This is the lower expression of masculine and feminine, right? And there's a deep sense of unworthiness and of not being enough. I mean, isn't this a plague among women, right? I'm not enough. I'm unworthy. We have comparisonitis against these unrealistic ideals of beauty, and Hollywood stars, and all this thing. It's just so it's just, yeah, it perpetuates the victim, right? And so when we invite our higher self, and when we start having a relationship with nature, and we summon light into us, all of this teaches us a balance between the right expression of masculine feminine energy, the right expression of our own heart and head, or the right balance between our heart and our head. And this does take a minute, right? Like, we need to trust this, because we've been so programmed for decades. In this lifetime, we've been programmed, and it seems almost impossible, almost unreachable to even consider this. But I am telling you that if you are willing to just keep walking your path, and wake up every day and do your best, and give yourself compassion and leeway if you get, sort of lured back into the trap of the lower expression of our humanity, um, and don't make that bad, but ask instead to be shown what is there more to know about the expression of yourself. So there's this expression of yourself, but there's also more. What is that? Be an inquiry. Be curious about that. It opens up, portals and gates of understanding. Not overnight, which is a trap of our mind, because we always want things like this, right? But if we know it's a trap, then we can be more patient with the process. And I always, like to say, I have the rest of my life to practice this and get better. And when I look back from any point in time that I've stood, when I've looked back, it's like, yeah, it has gotten better. I have to give myself credit for that. And I would ask you to do the same, because because it'll give you inspiration to keep moving forward, right? That's the thing. So you might know that this word sin, it means to make a mistake. And maybe I think the only mistake that a human being makes is turning away from our connection to our higher self. When we turn away from that, we make all kinds of mistakes. That's the big problem, right? But if we just tend to this one thing, if we cultivate ourselves to continually connect, you'll notice, I've noticed this, that I make less mistakes. I make better choices, including choices around my health, including which provider I choose to support my well-being, rather than to make me afraid of going into their office. There's just so many ways that this actually influences our life, our mind, our body, and our life for the better, when we just tend to this one thing, which is our connection. And I don't mean to make it sound like, oh, it's just that simple. It is simple, but it isn't easy. And it isn't easy because our mind is so, we have complicated this. And so it appears to our mind that the simplicity of just regularly connecting is ridiculous, but it isn't. So I don't know. I could go on about that, but just know that you're not a mistake. Your higher presence isn't a mistake. It's impossible for that to be the case. You wouldn't be here. There are no mistakes on earth. There are choices that individuals and collectives make that give feedback and outpicture in certain ways. And we could say, oh, well, there are better ways of doing it, that we can say, but the inherent nature of being alive is not a mistake, is the point. So you have to be willing to choose the premise that you are not a mistake, that you're not wrong, that you're not broken, that you're not enough, that you're not a sinner, and shift the foundation from which you operate from, which is, again, I'll say it, is I operate from a place that I'm an extension of my higher self. I am not a mistake. I am more than enough. I am worthy. And I am a vessel for this energy. And so I set my day up that way, day in and day out. And when I fall off my path or want to take an off ramp from that road, I just notice and bring myself back. I don't berate myself. I don't criticize or flagellate myself with self-judgment, because that is a form of suffering that I know isn't valuable and isn't worth my time. The only thing that's worth my time anymore, now believe me, it wasn't always this way. I'd spent decades in this self-judgment and self-criticism business, but where was it? What was I going to say with that? Is that, oh yeah, what's worth my time is using my attention, my energy, my moments, my breaths, my awareness, my time to come back to center. And if there's anything I need to know about how that all went down, that off-ramp thing, then I ask to be shown. And usually it's just, it's something that it just needs a love hug or a release or a healing. If it's a big deal, obviously we know when things are a big deal, they keep getting our attention. And that's a big chunk of healing, a healing piece to do. So, there's small, medium, and large of everything, right? So the small things, if I go on and off, I'm just like, oh yeah, there's that thing again. Okay, let me just remind myself that when this happens, I tend to go off the off ramp. So what can I do in the future, to keep that from happening? I mean, we would do that on any given subject anyway. Now we're just talking about the most important relationship that a human being will ever have. It's the relationship that influences all other relationships to be good and connected and filled with love. Yeah, there's going to be healing in those relationships too, but when we come from this place of this awareness that we're talking about in this premise, then we understand that the things that come up in our relationships are for us, and they're not being done to us, right? They're for our ever evolving capacity to hold more love in our system. And that's really the name of the game. And so when we reconcile this premise with ourselves and we invite a life force consciously, and we try to feel it and see it and taste it and smell it, then we actually it changes it changes our matter, right? Like, this is all matter, right? MATTER. And this is why it matters, because when every single person, when more people do this, we create a collective that is operating from this premise, which means we make choices in different ways. We gather and we support and we empower, and we don't abdicate and we don't abuse power. All of those things start shifting, and it changes the world. It changes things in a greater way, in the macrocosmic way. So so what I've just read, I gave the links for you to either get this book free or to the link to the Amazon page where it's at. I'm on page 11 in the PDF, and so you're welcome to go back and read this for yourself, because repetition, our mind learns by repetition, and it's just important to read a sentence and then let that sink into your, not just not just let it only be in the intellectual realm, but to drop into the realm of your cellular intelligence, your heart, and to sort of let it marinate so you can feel and know the truth of it for yourself, not because someone else has told you or you've read it in a book, but because you choose to, because it resonates. First, it resonates for you, and then you choose to um, go into the deeper layers of it and feel the essence of it so you can own it for yourself. That's the key here. So let me know what this how this is landing for you, and what it means, and what it brings up, and what you might walk forward with as a result of it. Okay. And then next week, I have to write this down because I want to remember this. I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the 30-day companion immersion course to this book, at a screaming deal, if you will. Because we know that when we keep working and walking with something, that uh, we own it. I keep using that word, but if we just read or hear something and it's just a flying by thing, then it's not really going to be something that we weave into our own tapestry of our mind and our body and our life. But when we keep putting ourselves in a relationship with it, then we actually can weave it in. Okay. So I look forward to hearing what pops for you. Any questions or comments you have, please feel free to leave them. Even if you're listening to the replay of this, that I'll still get a notification that you've left a comment, and I'll pop in and we can have a little chat. So thank you so much for your willingness to just open your consciousness to receive a broader premise, and a more serving premise, and a greater understanding that includes a more truth for yourself, more understanding of your true nature. Okay, so thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.